Go back to that club guy.
It's Around the Horn, delivered by Pizza Hut. Here's Tony Reale.
Welcome back to the show that gives points when they make points, if they make points. Plashke, make a point.
Kalishaw, they're partying in Kalishaw's gated driveway today.
TC in Dallas.
Who wants to come to Dallas now? Come on down.
Blackstone in D.C.
I miss Oprah already.
Smith.
The key, Tony, is to unleash your savoir-faire. Unleash it.
I'll take your word for that. Tim
What?
Kalishaw is going to get his points now. His Dallas Mavericks going on to the finals, even though he didn't pick them in round one. He didn't pick them in round two.
Whoa, stop
He
it
didn't
now.
pick them in round three until game two. I guess you're losing points. Let's go to work.
Not a good way to start.
It's the first word.
All right, after an improbable comeback for the second straight day, more ridiculousness, and the franchise's second conference championship ever, the image will take away Dirk's walk-off. Clearly, another trophy on his mind. The postseason run for Nowitzki, which started off with his coach calling him a top 10 player all time, and I know you scoffed at that, approaching all-time
picture.
status.
That's a great shot.
Has your perception of Dirk Nowitzki changed from this playoff run, Tim?
I think it has, but only slightly. I mean, he's been a great player pretty much since he arrived from Germany 13 years ago, but he's changed so much off the court in his demeanor, his determination to make himself either the best player in the league or the most unguardable player in the league, and to get this championship that we all thought, when he stayed here last year, is he kidding himself? This team is going to win 50 games and keep losing in the first round. But they've put it all together. But what he has done in the fourth quarter of games, we've seen it in the regular season a lot around here. Haven't seen it in the playoffs. But he's got a team around him that allows him to do it. And right now, he's just...
But let's go
he's at
bigger,
his
Tim
peak.
Kalishaw. Are you with Carlisle saying he's a top 10 player all time? Or is this postseason of his a top 10 postseason?
Top 10 all time is too much really to put anybody in when you got to start listing who, Russell and Wilton Cream and all the people in Magic and Bird that go there. But, is he top 25 all time? Yeah, I definitely think
Let's
he
see
is.
what Plashke thinks.
Well, Tim, you started with that fourth quarter thread. Let me finish it for you. Dirk averaged 11 points in the fourth quarter in the conference championship, second most of any NBA player in the last 10 years. That's 11 points in the fourth quarter averaged. You say slightly his perception changed? His perception has changed huge, if you ask me, because, yes, the regular season has always been a great player. We have never seen this from him in the postseason. We have never seen him take control like this. Remember, this is a guy that everybody thought was soft. This is a guy who still has the 4 straight losses to Miami in the finals on his shoulders. This is a guy who came out and acted like he was like Kobe Bryant, for Pete's sake. Seriously, I've never seen anybody play like this. He was tremendous. Tim, I think people all over the country now are thinking of this guy differently today than they were.
Well, I think it changes for a lot of people around the country just because the only thing they remember in the last 3 years is the fact that as a great player, Dirk Nowitzki couldn't get his team out of the first round. And they probably think about the only time they ever saw him in the NBA Finals when he had a meltdown in game 3, 4, and 5, didn't shoot over 40% in the last 3 games of that series, kicked the ball away in frustration, cost him a $5,000 fine. That's the thing that they remember. But the Dirk that I know and been around, he's a 25-10 guy in the playoffs. He stepped up his game in the fourth quarter. If there's one thing this series reminds you of, it's what maturity does for a pro athlete. You look at Kevin Durant on one end taking bad shots, doesn't have a post-up game, and you look at all that Dirk has added to his games over his years in NBA, and he's a fantastic player.
Yeah, that's why the perception, for me at least, hasn't changed. He's always been a great player, an unguardable player. And as far as Carlisle's comments about him being a top 10 player all time, I don't think he was talking about in terms of resumes, obviously not top 10, but in terms of ability, I don't think it's that ridiculous. Talking about a 7-footer who's got that kind of range and that kind of game, which he has added nuances to over the years. But the thing about the Dallas Mavericks is they have a better team around Dirk, and that's why the perception of the franchise has changed for me. It's funny how the farther you go, the more people appreciate you, but that's got a lot to do with the supporting cast. They don't win these last couple of games without Jason Kidd and Shawn Marion making big plays down the stretch themselves. So I think his supporting cast is better, much like LeBron's in Miami, much like Kobe's when he went from being a whiny guy to a champion because they got Pau Gasol. It's his supporting cast that's different.
Good point, Michael.
Well, Michael Smith made the right point there. Dirk is so hard to rank because there's nobody else like him. There are no other 7-footers who shoot 40% on threes, who hit 90% of their free throws.
Plashke.
I can't imagine anybody on this panel thought Dirk had the kind of killer instinct that we saw him have in this postseason. No, he's never shown that before. Unbelievable.
He missed the three-pointer last night. They got an offensive rebound, giving me another opportunity to make a three-pointer.
He hit the second one. And then the walk-off after the game, really putting the celebration on the side. When you compare that to what the Miami Heat did their last series against Boston.
Yeah, big juxtaposition.
Dirk's got more to do.
We move on. The Thunder then, going out in the conference finals with a team of 22 and 21-year-olds by most measures, that's a huge success. But going out the way they did, losing like they did those last two games, and Durant failing to close.
Look at this guy.
And Westbrook chucking, and Maynard waving off teammates for the shot.
You gotta be kidding me.
Westbrook walking off without shaking hands. How would you describe where the Thunder are and where they're going, Bill Plaschke?
Well, I'll describe right now where Russell Westbrook was going, and that was to a classless place when he left the floor early. He should know better than that. Westbrook should know better than that. He grew up in L.A., watched the Lakers sell. You know, you stay out there and you shake the hands of the team that beat you. Very classless by Westbrook. He'll learn. Durant then showed me very confusion. You know that only 25% of his shots inside the arc came from passes that were thrown to him inside the arc during this finals, the conference finals. They weren't passing him the ball in the right spots. That's Westbrook's job as a point guard. So they've got issues there. I think Westbrook and Durant have issues. And everybody says, well, they're young, they'll get better, blah, blah, blah. I think there's deep-seated stuff between these two guys, and I wonder if they have to make a change somewhere down the line for the Thunder to move ahead and
Michael
take the next
Smith,
step.
what do you think of that?
I do think they're headed in the right direction. I mean, they went from the first round last year to the conference finals this year as part of the progression of a team getting to a championship. It usually doesn't happen overnight. These are the young group. But I do think that Maynard waving off Harden and Westbrook was really a microcosm of this issue. I mean, when the heat is on, there are way too many cooks in the kitchen. I mean, they had three ball handlers who like to create on the court at one time. So maybe they're going in the right direction, but they have to really evaluate who's leading them there. I think Harden needs to play more with the starters as the primary facilitator. Let Westbrook play off the ball. And maybe, I know people have brought this up before, but maybe Scott Brooks is an issue. Maybe he can't control all these egos.
Blackstone.
Well, I think you hit on it right there with Scott Brooks. Not to take anything away from him. He's a good guy, and the other year he was, a Coach of the Year guy. But right now he's got a team that's very young. They need some leadership. They don't have anybody to lean on like Dallas did in a Dirk Nowitzki or a Jason Kidd or a Terry or all those veterans, Marion, that those guys have. They've got no guy like that at all, and that's exactly what they need. And it's got to come from the head coach if it can't come from somebody on the floor. And right now he just has not been able to do that. We talk about all the bad possessions that they have. That's when the coaches got to call a timeout and say, let's get it together.
Kalishaw.
Well, I think two or three things. One, James Harden, had he not fouled out of Game 4, we wouldn't be talking about where Oklahoma City's heading next year. We'd be talking about what they're going to do in Game 6, trailing Dallas 3-2. Two, these guys, the four key players on their team are all 22 years old, or Ibaka is 21. They are positioned perfectly under any kind of new salary cap, under a more restrictive one, to add to this team, to get the pieces they need. And I think there's way too much criticism of Westbrook for the flaws in Durant's game, who does not create his own shot, who turns the ball over too much. They put everything, all his faults on Westbrook.
Plaschke, let's go back to him, though. You said deep-seated issues.
Michael and Kevin, it's not Scotty Brooks' fault. Remember, he benched he benched Westbrook in the entire fourth quarter of a game, and they won the game. He's got guts, this coach. His players are the ones that have the problems.
If everybody on the court feels empowered to wave people off and to play one-on-one hero ball, that's a coach's problem, in my opinion.
Yep, you need leadership from the bench, and you used to have it out there in L.A. Let's see if you have it now.
We've been called a lot of timeouts. Why do you got to call timeouts? Don't mean anything.
We're taking a break.